its Euro 2024 qualifying in March, like the US does. Iceland, Finland and Ukraine also in the pot, but runners are guaranteed a home tie for their semi-final as a consequence of their common weakness last night, a 1-1 home draw with Turkey. Croatia beat Denmark 1-7 qualifying automatically for the space. And England's outstanding striker in women's 2022 Euros, Beth Mead, is back in the squad 2022 upset. She's back in the squad for next month's Nations League matches. She's been out of international football for about a year when she was now though to Ronnie O'Sullivan, second time for the Super Champions, is now awaiting a disciplinary judgment by the British government. From what we understand of the comments made about 5 other matches, one to Mr. Northern Ireland Open and playing with Macau, China instead, the Netherlands has now been rescheduled. However, O'Sullivan is now reconsidering his future as he's been explaining to our Today colleague Anna Ross. I have no option now. I can't do what I need to do. Just work time, doing stuff out there. I don't know what I'm so we're at kind of crossroads now. Isn't it? Why do you say that? Because there's just not enough here in the UK for me to justify the effort that I put in. When I go to China, playing great venues, great crowds, great prize money, and I love it. And if that gets to the point where I'm not able to do that, I'm not allowed to do that, I probably won't play. I'll probably go and play the Chinese Open. Because I still want to play snooker, I still want to queue. I might play with a few tournaments and sponsors, so that it's important for us to play a bit of snooker.
I mean, I don't know enough about the governance of the sport.
Yeah.
Is that people who run snooker in the UK saying, Ronnie's a legend, he's one of ours, if he's got years left in him, we want him to play?
I'm not one of those. I'm an individual. I have to go where it's best for me. I don't get appreciated on the snooker circuit. None of the top players do. I'd love to be able to just keep playing snooker for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but if I'm going to be forced into a situation where that's not possible, then I'm not going to just accept like what they're about 130,000, which is going to go to them after 12 months.
Do you feel that the age you've got to, the achievements you've got, and you're about, you can speak out?
Yeah, no, I can't speak out. I've accepted that. So that's the situation that I'm in. I'm under disciplinary. I know that they're going to throw the book at me. They're going to try and come up with all sorts, which is fine. I'll take that on the chin. But once that is the situation, then obviously I then need to find out what's right for me. I'm not prepared to compromise. The last 8, 10 years I've had a great life. I've enjoyed doing my own events. It's never been a problem for the last 8 years. But now all of a sudden it seems to be a problem because I'm going to China a lot more. And I want a piece of the cake. I don't feel like I need to give them a piece of my cake. They don't want to give me a piece of their cake. So I'm not doing anything wrong. It's not being streamed on TV. It's just done in private venues. I don't think it's right here that I'm out there doing something for myself and I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I just don't think it sits well. There's something to say this. Not a good thing. spokesperson, Leila Moody, told us Israel was holding its nose to do what it had to do, because it had a moral obligation to bring the hostages home. The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is expected to use his autumn statement to announce a cut to national insurance for millions of workers. This came up in the Commons around lunchtime, where it's thought he'll also set out a series of measures aimed at boosting business investment, with a message that the economy is back on track. The artificial intelligence firm OpenAI has announced that its co-founder Sam Altman will return as its chief executive days after he was fired by the board. Almost all OpenAI employees had threatened to quit if he wasn't reinstated. Thanks very much indeed, Tony. The time now is 2:15 minutes to 9. Let's turn now to the deal reached by Israel and Hamas to release 50 hostages being held in Gaza during a 4-day pause in the fighting. That's in return to the claims of Palestinians being held in Israeli prisons. I've just been talking to Tom White, the Gaza director of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, who's based in Rafah in the south of Gaza. I began by asking whether the prospect of a 2-week pause had raised hopes of increasing aid to Gaza.
Certainly we hope that the amount of aid allowed to Gaza increases. We've averaged 47 trucks a day. We are saying bare minimum we need 150 trucks and more, so certainly we're hoping more aid comes in. But the most important thing for us is that we want to use this time to do two major things. One is to access populations that we have not been able to get assistance to. We just have not had access to them because, particularly in the north of Gaza, the fighting has been too intense, or we could not coordinate movement into areas. So we really want to get humanitarian aid to people in the north. And the second thing is that we'll use the opportunity to try and repair some of the infrastructure, particularly things like water lines that were impossible to do whilst the conflict was raging.
Give us a sense of what conditions are like in some of the other installations where people are sheltering.
The conditions remain desperate. To give you a sense, an average indoor shelter that normally houses 1,000 kids a day, we there have plans that in the case of war they could shelter 1,500 people. Our shelters in the south now are averaging over 6,000 people in their shelters, so they are very, very crowded. Women and children sleep in classrooms literally side by side, and then the men are sleeping out in open playground areas. We're averaging about one toilet to every 125 people, or one shower effectively for 700 people, so the really conditions are very tough.
The disease spreading.
We've already seen a significant rise in the number of skin diseases, things like scabies, and what's particularly concerning is things like water diarrhea, which we've seen a 40% increase in the last 2 weeks, and that's compounded by the fact that we can't get people enough food.
What about casualties and what about members of your own staff?
It's very difficult to deal with 24 hours. We've lost colleagues. They are doctors, teachers, nurses, sanitation workers from all walks of society. We're right in so many worlds. But the reality is the whole community, everywhere you speak, has lost a family member or numerous family members, friends, colleagues. So Gaza is a community that is bleeding right now, and it will take, I would say, decades for people to start.
Now, what's been talked about in this deal is a 4-day pause in the fighting. Presumably, you would argue that that pause needed.
Our position is very clear. We need a humanitarian ceasefire full stop. The war now needs to come to an end. There has been enough death, destruction and displacement, and so the conflict needs to end. That's our position very clearly. So we welcome a 4-day ceasefire, but we need a permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
Welcome for Mahmoud Abbas, who's chairman of the Palestinian Authority. We're talking about a Palestinian politician who did report on the Palestinian National Initiative, Dr. Mr. Black. Good morning.
see that the Israeli president will come back here, that is two of them, as well as one of the Palestinian presidents. These are not just any presidents, I mean the Palestinians are big business. And I think what happened, he broke at least three of the Israeli taboos. The first taboo was there is no place for ceasefire, just what we call humanitarian pause. But what we've seen here is an agreement about a ceasefire. A ceasefire that would extend hopefully and become a permanent ceasefire.
Because obviously that's a key important for not just having good businesses but having a pipeline of people coming into business.
Carl, forgive me interrupting, not the greatest of lines, but we got your message. Carl Ennis there, Chief Executive of Siemens, in the studio live and therefore not dependent on a dodgy computer line. Here in Salford, Katie Gallagher, Managing Director of Manchester Digital, the trade body for technology and digital businesses here in the north, and Rachel Kettlewell, who founded a business called Fern & Rosie, which is a jam company which sells to a whole range of supermarkets. Morning to you both. Katie, certainty we were hearing a second ago there. Certainty that we want from Siemens. Is that what your businesses in the tech sector want as well?
I would echo all of Carl's points really. I think, companies aren't going to invest unless they know they're doing something that has some long-term value, and they can, the recent economic headwinds have seen a drop in investment in early stage companies. We know that 67% of small businesses want to adopt digital technology, but 75% of those haven't as yet, which is down to uncertainty, not really knowing what their next move is, worrying about cash in the bank, etc.
So is that more important than tax policy? The idea that you're not going to be changing policy every 6 months, changing government for goodness sake every few months as it seemed at times.
I mean, we're not, I'm not saying that managing the economy isn't very complicated, but it's just some simple things, tax breaks, things that employers and businesses understand, and not constantly keeping, so we don't want another policy every 6 months. We just want some common sense and companies to be able to run their businesses and know that they're not going to have rug pulled out from them in 6 months.
Now the Chancellor talks up your sector. I've heard him talk about tech being like the financial services back in the 80s. We had that so-called Big Bang, which meant that a vast percentage of our taxes came from banks and other financial sectors. Does it feel to you like the tech sector is treated that way by the government, or does he have to do a lot more?
I mean, the government talks about tech almost, on a daily basis, and have an ambition that the UK becomes a tech world superpower. So, there will be positive news for the tech industry today. My big concern is, I talk about regional tech ecosystems, and I'm obviously all about Greater Manchester, but I genuinely believe tech ecosystems are levers to lift up whole regional economies and create high quality jobs everywhere in the UK. So it's really important that we get the investment and the schemes right to support not just the big tech businesses and the small tech businesses, but communities.
Let's turn to Katie now. Katie, producing this, is it sugar free or just low sugar jam?
Hi Rachel, this is Katie.
Oh, right.
Sorry, hi. We are a reduced sugar jam, so higher fruit, lower sugar content, all natural ingredients, not using anything like concentrates or citric acid, things like that.
So for a much smaller company,
Yeah.
set up in the name of your daughters, as I understand,
Yeah.
with about 10 employees,
Yes.
full expenses don't really go on, presumably. What is it?
I think, like you said, that obviously it is difficult to manage the whole economy, but I think when you look specifically at smaller businesses, there's almost a perfect storm around small businesses and startups in the UK, in that we are managing the rising cost of goods and the impact that has on supply chain. So the cost of glass jars going up, the cost of fruit rising exponentially. I think it would be lovely to look at small businesses in a different way that we look at than the way that we look at bigger businesses. So perhaps support in place so that we can recruit and retain the best team members, because actually we haven't got the same budgets as the large companies.
Lots of talk of national insurance, which are going to play
Yeah, which would be really helpful.
employer as well as employee.
Yes. Of course, because when we look at our total budget, we haven't got, as I said, we've not got the big pockets of the bigger businesses, and we want to, we're trying to build a business that makes a positive impact. So we want to recruit and retain the best team members to help us do that.
Now, he has got things to spend, and it looks like, according to his own rules, he has got some cash. Some people say, well, where's the cash at all? Put it into public services that need the money so much. Where do you come up with that?
Before I founded Fundraising, I was a teacher, and I think I talked repeatedly about the stress that our school system is under at the moment. I think schools are incredibly overworked, they're underfunded, and I think I would love to see some more support for schools, especially around health breakfast clubs. So we know there's funding in place for school dinner times, but breakfast clubs and after school clubs at the moment, there's currently no funding for that, and that means the more vulnerable schools and the more vulnerable children in our society, it's always those children that are struggling, so we need to support them.
Long choices for the Chelsea. We will know the answer at about 12:30, or at least the beginning answer. It's that particular situation because a lot of those hitting Elliot March matched the digital joy of the UK customer as well. Carl Evans, before that, Chief Executive of Siemens. Thanks for joining us.
The time now is 7 minutes to 9. He's a playwright known for modern cutting-edge drama. The title of one of Mark Ravenhill's plays, which begins shopping and Mark joins me now in the studio along with Erica Wyman, Deputy Artistic Director and Lordship Hamlet, of course. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Tell me first of all, Mark, where did you get the idea of writing about this collaboration? The first thought
and then I returned to it and didn't want it. So I was started to look back on myself and I thought, who do I want to spend time with? And these two people I directed about so I think the water collection and something so incredibly complex. That I had to back to research and radio paper the state inside the paper and what that happened for about 4 months.
Tell us, describe the images, describe everything. And then afterwards started to work biography and then she found documents so she was a strong person. She was extremely from her life. There's so much of her life was supporting her and facilitating her. So I think it's a very nice system that is that another life is fantastic by facilitating the work of great people. as Mark says, a very good company. They're going to be a great couple to spend an evening with. But I think the thing that we can draw out is the sense of how power works in the relationship, how cruelty works, how when you're making work of art, all of those things are at play. We're honest, and I think the play is very honest about that. So it will be quite a stark space that will remind us of the sea. It will have a glorious sky in it, but the sense that they're sort of simultaneously choosing to be there doing it, and they're also trapped with this commission that they've got to write. Important to say that Gloriana was one of the least successful critically of all of Britain's works, and it was a sort of glorious disaster, although there's not much to recommend it in the music. But it was playing to the wrong audience, particularly when it opened, and they both have a sense of it. So I think the theatre also is a very interesting place to stage the sense of terror, horror, delight, trying to make something that may fail.
And then on in February, Eric Wyman, Mark Ravenhill, partner.
That is all from us. Our editors today, Tom Fielden and Herbie Patney, the studio director, Lee Wilson. Have a good day.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. Israel says a deal with Hamas to release 50 hostages being held in Gaza is a small glimmer of news on the road to free all of those abducted last month. The agreement will see a 4-day pause in fighting, critics hope, to allow large amounts of humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. The truce can be extended by an additional day for every 10 hostages released. But the spokesman for the Israeli government, Elon Levy, told Today the ball was in Hamas's court.
Nobody likes this, but Hamas is holding 240 hostages, including over 30 children. We have moral obligation to bring them home, so we're holding our noses and we're doing what we have to do. You know, there are children in there. There is a 3-year-old girl we're hoping will be released. Her father was murdered in front of her. She was torn away from his arms, and she's been held in a dark tunnel for nearly 50 days now.
Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is expected to use his autumn statement today to cut national insurance for millions of workers. It's understood he'll also reduce business taxes and set out an overhaul of the benefits system, including tougher sanctions for some claimants. The co-founder of the artificial intelligence firm behind ChatGPT will return as its chief executive, days after he was fired. Sam Altman was sacked by the board of OpenAI, and almost all of its employees then threatened to quit unless he was reinstated. North Wales police are working to establish the cause of a car accident in which 4 teenagers died in Gwynedd. They're believed to be Gavin Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris, who were on a camping trip to Urari, also known as...
During his theories, and I found the more complex the picture was, the easier it was for me to put it together.
His brothers and sister were all artistic as well, but art wasn't something that was easy for them to pursue.
You know, my dad was quite a strong patriarchal figure. All of us rough and tough on the council estate, so go out, do deals, had money. So I think we grew up with a contradictory set of values. Just had to draw stuff, paint, but there was no money in it. I knew some rough people, some dodgy characters, and they were involved in passport scams, but they couldn't work out how to do the security features.
With his artistic prowess, David figured out how to add watermarks to the fake passports. The scam offered the kind of money that David felt he couldn't turn down, and he had his eye on a new home.
I saw this castle come up for sale up in Scotland. I just really liked it, and the dungeon and everything else like that. So I thought, oh, what, I'm going to buy that. But I ended up in another dungeon, not one of my mates.
David and the others were caught by the police. In February of 1992, he was given a 5-year prison sentence.
Psychologically, it took some getting used to be in such a small space. It was very claustrophobic.
David was looking for a way to cope, so he went to the prison education department to ask about art classes.
I thought I'd just go and read about art, and the teacher said, no, you can't do that. Then she gave me some paints. It was really like an explosion. I started painting Monet, Van Gogh, Van Gogh, and they could work out how I could do it.
First time in his life, David had the space and the time to paint. Copies of famous paintings gushing out of him.
I had that time to hold my craft first, so I could start doing the right things.
David got out of prison in 1997. His art was unbelievable. He wanted to see something bigger.
refugees there, it's terrible. Such a shame that postcards, video, background stuff. But it's really about 2 hours, so I started thinking, and I just put so you know the life of it, it's like,
David finally saw painting. It's still possible to do. So I still copy of an artist in mind. I suspect that most of us believe that artists they're inspired to make their own art. Some people disagree with this analysis.
I love this idea of creative flexibility. I think you just can't work for yourself. You just gotta lay your hands on this stuff and make it your own.
This is Austin Kleon. He's a writer and an artist. And in his book, Steal Like an Artist, he argues that theft is, in fact, the root of all art form.
People ask me all the time, well, why do you use that word steal? Is it still bad? I said, well, I use the word steal because I'm not very original. The reason I came to Steal Like an Artist is I kept noticing that all my favorite artists use that word steal. And they talk about theft, borrowing.
David Bowie considered himself a thief. He said that the only art he ever studied was stuff he could steal from. Even Steve Jobs confessed to copying in a 1995 interview for the PBS and Channel 4 documentary Triumph of the Nerds, which was produced by John Gow Productions and Oregon Public Broadcasting, and saw the great tech innovator drawing inspiration from the art world.
Picasso had a saying, he said, good artists copy, great artists steal. And we have, always been shameless about stealing great ideas.
And he's right. Stealing or copying great ideas has a long history in the visual arts. During the Renaissance, copying was a recognized, sometimes even celebrated way of training.
You would become apprenticed to like a master painter, and you would spend most of your time being a fetcher or a gopher. You would do all the stuff that the master didn't want to do. And then eventually, you might make a copy of the painting that the master was doing.
Austin says it's not so much the master's work that we ought to be stealing, but the thinking behind the work.
You don't want to look like Picasso, you want to feel like Picasso felt when he was making the work.
I love the story told by Hunter S. Thompson that he would type out full pages of Ernest Hemingway's novels. He said, I just want to feel what it feels like to write that well. And for Austin, copying is just one step on an artist's journey to finding their own voice.
One of the things that happens in an artist's life is that they realize that they can't perfectly copy their heroes. That's where you kind of start finding your own style. You try to sing like Joni Mitchell and you realize, well, I don't have the range for that, but how do I get that emotion out using my tool?
Sport isn't the same as art, but I remember the first time I watched Chen Xinhua, a wonderful table tennis player from China. It was on a grainy VHS video, and it felt like witnessing the divine, his elegance, his balance. At the time, I was just 12 years old. I was the best in my county, but not yet competing at international level. But for weeks, I walked around my home, along the streets, playing forehand and backhand, mimicking his technique, hitting at thin air. In the end, it almost felt that I was Chen Xinhua, or at least my own version of him. After his first copied painting sold on eBay, David got to work on more. In a somewhat distorted sense, perhaps, he was doing what Austin Kleon talks about, copying as a way to find the mindset behind the work.
My method was to do at least 5 or 6 copies, and then once I've got their style, I can see through their eyes, and then I can do a version. Take a subject they like, and I can paint it in their style.
David was getting bolder, graduating from copies to straight-up forgeries, paintings that might be mistaken for unknown, previously unseen works by a well-known artist, and they were fetching high prices in bidding wars.
I was getting £4,000 for a picture. When afternoon's work, it's not bad.
Well, no.
David didn't want to go back to prison. He worried that passing his paintings off as a real deal could land him there again for fraud. So he paid a visit to a solicitor friend who told him about a legal loophole.
All I had to do is put a caveat at the bottom of the description. You can have no problems with paperwork reluctantly selling in style or after.
By including these caveats that the painting is in the style of or after a particular artist, David was signaling to eBayers that he couldn't vouch for the painting's profits because he didn't have any paperwork to prove it. But this was frankly a sleight of hand. The reason he didn't have any paperwork signing the painting of a particular artist was because it didn't exist. David knew full well the exact problems of paintings stemming from the studio, so it wasn't illegal, but it was, I think, dishonest. Mostly, David was working with what he calls second-tier artists, people who were less likely to have heard of, but every now and then he couldn't resist going for a blockbuster name.
One day, I bought an old canvas and had to cut figures on it. And I thought it would almost be a fancy painting for a bit of work. The two figures I smudged, I put them into two balancing figures to get wrapped in, and I put a few of his colours on them.
On the back of the painting, David added a little note. Care of Peter Lacey, Bacon's boyfriend. Then, he uploaded it to eBay.
Never read it. But I didn't do anything wrong, really, because I described it as it was. I didn't mention Francis Bacon.
Fabricating these little backstories was a key part of David's success.
It's like a golden bullet, really, because it was like, you'll get no interest, you get a lot. Because it just gives that added layer of, I'm not saying it is, I'm saying
David had a sort of plausible deniability. He's not saying explicitly that these paintings are the real deal, but he isn't saying that they're not. It's a bit like a politician saying, I can neither confirm nor deny. It's as if the truth is left there, dangling, tantalizing. David loved, finally, being able to paint for a living. He had developed a whole range of techniques to make his paintings seem a bit older.
if the paint's going to get nice cracks now, what I'll do is I'll just sand it a little bit, and then when I age the painting up, the cracks come back. It's a really nice effect.
There was a time when David was taking paintings around to Hayes at the house of a friend who smoked 60 a day. The smoke would add a lovely patina.
That option's no longer open. What he said. I think it was lung cancer.
To get into the headspace to forge a particular artist, David would read biographies, watch documentaries, pore over images, until he was fully immersed in their world.
You put it into your subconscious, and you start dreaming there with Lowry, or you are Lowry painting, and you get right into the psyche of it. It's almost like preparing to be an actor.
Arabs to see if they might be interested in stocking his paintings. To his surprise, they were.
And the good man is particularly bright and sold out.
He was finally outside the morally dubious territory of his previous work and onto the straight and narrow, citing the reverse of his painting with his emotion. David painted, so no one could possibly mistake him for the real thing. And he began to pick up commissions from all over the world.
One guy just bought registration Picasso, and he wanted me to go and paint it, because he wanted to plug in. So he had two young children, and he didn't have paint together. I sold paintings to people who owned clubs, and they could afford drawings, but they write more.
The artist David was copying had such different backstories to his own. Caravaggio was notorious for getting into fights, even murdered a man. Basquiat struggled deeply with a drug addict. And it makes me wonder how David manages to so fully embody so many different perspectives. Indeed, some might say he never could, but this was an will not take on a commission unless he feels an intimate connection with the artist.
I had a commission to do a David Harley. She just wasn't my cup of TBR. And it obviously we got to go to work. And I've never seen video. It was like pulling teeth. It wasn't faithful at all.
David went straight after all these years, and that might be for the best in more ways than one. AI is becoming increasingly good at detecting fakes and fraudulence. And some say that the emergence of AI is a bit ironic, because at the same time, it's allowing people to create fake pictures as well.
Companies like DALL-E, Midjourney create art with generative AI. They are making artwork based on the data that is scraping online. Anything you wanted to create, it could be a cat up a tree wearing a dress into a banana.
This is Laura Lewington. She's a co-presenter on the BBC's technology programme, Click, with an AI expert.
One of the problems we really face is AI-generated images. Those are too quick where it can't know what's real or not very quickly.
Images generated with artificial intelligence are already fooling Google's algorithm. Earlier this year, an AI-generated image of a woman looking out of a window in the style of Edward Hopper was the top result when he searched the artist's name. The proliferation of these softwares has even led people to ask if artists might one day become obsolete.
This photograph by German photographer Boris Hildagson won a prestigious prize. The problem is, it isn't real.
Boris Hildagson won the creative category of the prestigious Sony World Photography Award with a frankly beautiful image. The eerie black and white picture is of a younger woman in the foreground, and an older woman is hanging on to her from behind. The furore around the Hildagson win shows that the notions of authorship and artistic genres are already experiencing challenges with the development of AI.
Right now, I don't think we can see AI-generated art truly being
Okay.
We've really got loads of dollars. I mean, if we talk about more widely the kind of working culture of these places, and Helen, as you were mentioning, obviously Elon Musk, but Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, there's also Amazon's Jeff Bezos, of course, OpenAI's Sam Altman. You talked about the sort of cult around these people. What is the working culture like in these Silicon Valley firms? Are they more cults than companies?
I think they, well, yes, I think there is a mission to them, say, all of them. And, Elon Musk has also talked about how they also talk about, I want to die on Mars, I want to do certain things. He wants to live this very big life and take the journey on his own. When he took over what was then Twitter, he said, I only want people who are extremely hardcore. And, we've done strange pictures of people sleeping, in the offices. And he cut loads and loads of roles, saying you've all kind of got too kind of fat and complacent. I only want the super hard workers will pull 20-hour days. That's often the culture in all of these places. You can read about Elon Musk sleeping on the factory floor at the car factory. So there is a kind of, a fetishization about being pioneers, about, which is also very American, right? This idea of like the Prometheus, you're going out and doing stuff. And it has to be said that for a certain cadre of people, that is really appealing. They don't want a 9 to 5. It's very interesting, I won't tell you anymore, but sometimes when you talk to people who maybe come out of Elon Musk who's slightly bruised, they nonetheless talk about him in these slightly messianic terms, like they were lucky to be in the room with such a kind of godlike figure, even if it was, objectively to the outside, it sounds horrible to the
I feel like they're really too extreme in terms of causing culture and like where there's autism, yoga, and that's what sort of they said we can't really like a lot of people saying, and it's just psychological something that's tough to do. We have to change the culture. And when you talk about people like everyone in that world, when he charged them, and one day, about 10 years, Musk goes with an inventor that he held on to this thing. And he ended up so long as the time he goes from this over by now after he started showing so about so we might be
咦？不過我企實喺我呢度嘅，邊個嚟㗎？呢包嚟嘅咩？我嗰度攞咗你個包。 自己都唔知啊，可能你。Mention.
There were things that I found just interesting or appalling, and I quite happily put them all in the book.
What was the most important thing?
I think sometimes the way we treat people, but I actually think, given the current few weeks, he has a conspiracy mindset. I don't think Klaus was a copycat who believes Anthony Fauci did this, and I mean all these weird conspiracies. And there are times when Musk goes into what Brian is offering called where he just gets lost for 4 or 5 hours and embraces conspiracy theories and posts them, and it is not clinical, it's abhorrent.
Helen Lewis, Shannon mentioned how the input of the students that we were media, so it is worth spending a bit of time looking at big text attitude to journalism. Can it be summed up as, what can it be summed up as, suspicion or?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think there was a phase maybe in the early 2010s where there was pretty gushing journalism about the new tech companies. It was really, because it was exciting and new, and it was utopian, and this was what was carrying the Arab Spring, and this was going to liberate us and be more democratic. And then at some point that really curdled, I think, not entirely coincidentally around the time that Donald Trump came to power in America. And now actually I think there's a default suspicion from journalism towards the tech companies, and very much the same thing goes in the other direction. And you will often see Musk saying, don't get your views from the mainstream media, get it right here. Everyone should come and publish this directly, and that's much more honest. And he would much rather do an interview with somebody like the podcaster Lex Friedman, who was very much in the same scene as him, than he would sit down with BBC. He's happier in that kind of friendly, well put in a friendly kind of conspiracy zone. He has got a kind of intellectual, media around him, but everybody is just very specific to the things and comfortable with it. Shirley goes, they aren't just suspicious of the media. I mean, many of these new tech businesses fundamentally undermine the ways traditional media, for example, accesses audiences and revenue.
there is some destruction going on.
Yes, I think all publishers, internet publishers would tell you that, Facebook, I think pretty much at the direction of Mark Zuckerberg, CEO and founder, Facebook's essentially switched off the pipe, which means that at one point Facebook was really prioritising having news in the feed. So if you open the app, you see a lot of content from the BBC, Business Insider, New Statesman, The Atlantic, etc. And now that has gone away. Publishers are no longer prioritising the feed, and that has hurt revenue both directly and indirectly, and that is a direct decision that affects and is directly impacting publishers. So I think where there was a bit of a love-in perhaps 5-ish years ago, on both sides there is definitely greater scepticism and will be actually going forward.
And what drives it to it? If we talk about Twitter, which Elon Musk has said for last year, how do you assess the impact he's had on what is going on in X?
I think that he put his thumb on the scale very much open and to more conservative and particularly populist right.
我哥陣間入屋換衫，記得見公公同埋隻 BB 跟住翻嚟，我哋就出去。OK。爸爸講咩？我哥爸爸講咩頭先？嚇？爸爸講咩啊頭先？
The White House recently condemned Elon Musk's endorsement of what it called a hideous anti-Semitic conspiracy theory on the platform.
If you remember this, you will die. Something's coming for us. Something bad. And 9 million people are in mortal danger.
Their time has come. Doctor Who starts on Saturday on BBC iPlayer. This is BBC Radio 4. It's 5 o'clock and 6 p.m. Debbie Davis.
Hello there. Do I detect a faint hint of spring election in the air? I'm going to go further. The main rate of employee national insurance by 2 percentage points. Tomorrow I'm introducing urgent legislation to bring it in from January the 6th.
National insurance is cut as Chancellor Jeremy Hunt delivers his autumn statement. Most forecasters downgraded and taxes overall still rising.
The British people won't be taken for fools. They know that what has been announced today owes more to the cynicism of a party desperate to cling onto power than the real priorities of this high-tax, low-growth Conservative government.
We'll have analysis of what the autumn statement means. We hear from former Chancellor Tony Clark. And we'll speak to front benches from both the Labour and Conservative. Also on hostage prisoner swap and the pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas has been agreed. Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton tells us he doesn't think the deal was a good idea.
I'm very worried about this pause in the fighting as the hostages are released. I think it may provide some benefit for Israel in terms of regrouping, but I think it essentially is very much in Hamas's interest.
We'll also get his views on American politics as someone who is no fan of either side. And we'll describing the town of
你知道？唔係咩？
Our census time ago pointed out that this could see an license could compensate income tax creditors remain frozen while prices of wages continue to rise. Causing quite a lot of opinions in North. With wages from Israel and Hamas. In the meantime, Israel is continuing its assaults as hospital Hamas
Yeah. Yeah.
Israel released more than 100 Palestinian prisoners. The Israeli government says the war is extending for a day each time another 10 hostages are let go. One player possessing the advisor to Israel's military.
The only reason this is happening now that Hamas is agreeing to this, there's no incentive to that humanitarians, even to kidnap babies. I know humanitarians.
見到爸爸俾咗你嗰支電池係咪嗰個啊？
Destroy their imagination, eliminate their television. They were desperate. These tigers.
Because some state agencies have welcomed the possibility of violence from whites, Gaza, Gaza, Palestinian refugees. Says what those do.
One is to access populations that we have not been able to get assistance to because they have not had access to because number 5 has been too intense. The second thing is to use the opportunity to try and repair some of the infrastructure, particularly things like water lines that were possible to do whilst the conflict was waiting.
Four men sentenced to life in prison for killing young women and hope in Liverpool initiative. Liverpool Crown Court delivered Ashley Dale, who was 28, was unable to kill her boyfriend and other local men. Jail terms for the four men ranged from 41 to 47 years in prison. Ashley Dale had been alone at home when she was killed. The gang had been targeting her boyfriend. They thought he was being drugs from her. He refused to give evidence against the men at the trial. He said he was afraid of being seen as a grass. Ashley's mother spoke to the court during the hearing. She said to be never forgiven killers. Hope they saw her daughter's face in their sleep. But that boyfriend husband, James Witham, got up and ran from the dock. He hid in the corridor before being told to go back down. Families of four teenagers whose bodies were found in a partially submerged and overturned car in North Wales say they're devastated by their loss. The four young men, aged 16 to 18, lived in Shrewsbury and had set out for a camping trip. Police say they believe their deaths were accidental. The mother of one of the teenagers described it as a nightmare. A number of huge water spouts, which are like tornadoes but form over water, have been spotted off the Amalfi Coast in southern Italy. It's not thought that the tall, whirling columns of air and water caused them. Well, autumn state. It was posited as an autumn statement for growth. Here's how the chances look.
In today's autumn statement for growth, our choice is not big government, high spending and high tax, because we know that leads to less growth, not more. Instead, we reduce debt, cut taxes and reward work. We deliver world-class education. We build domestic sustainable energy. And we back British business with 110 growth measures. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through them all. But
Well, at times, to be honest, it did sound like he was giving us each and every measure, some large, some small, committing over the next 2 years to pilot jobs, increase the number of apprentices in engineering, putting in place concierge service for large international investors. $500 million over the next 2 years to fund innovation centres to help make the UK an AI powerhouse. $2 billion for zero emission investments in the automotive sector, $1 billion in aerospace, $500 million for life science, lots and lots of kind of industrial policy. But the single biggest piece of industrial plan was full of space. Making permanent a temporary tax on that's a big change. Talk a bit about those. Now the real rabbit out the hat in the oil thing wasn't it? It was for the workers. We'd heard national insurance is going to be cut before the change, and the amount was sufficient. If we want people to get up early in the morning, if we want them to work nights, if we want an economy where people go the extra mile and work hard,
then we need to recognise that their hard work benefits us all. So today, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to cut the main 12% rate of employee national insurance. If I cut it by 1 percentage point to 11%, that would be an extra £225 in the pockets of the average worker every year. But instead, I'm going to go further and cut the main rate of employee national insurance by 2 percentage points. That change will help 27 million people. It means someone on the average salary of £35,000 will save over £450. For the average nurse, it's a saving of £520. For the typical police officer, a saving of £630 every single year. And Mr. Speaker, I would normally bring in a measure like this at the start of the new tax year in April. But instead tomorrow I've introduced some urgent legislation to bring it in from January the 6th. So people could see the benefits in their payslips at the start of the new year.
So that was the individual work. Now the argument of the next election is kind of clarified. The Tory line is urgent lower taxes to get Who was towards the end of the session?
Because lower tax means higher growth. And that is the difference between this side and that one. In 13 years, Labour raised taxes in every single budget. But Conservatives cut taxes when we responsibly can. And today, we do just that. We cut taxes to help bigger businesses invest. We cut taxes to help smaller businesses grow. We cut taxes for the self-employed to keep our country running. And from January, we cut taxes for 27 million working people whose hard work drives our economy forward.
So that's the classic Conservative case. Cut taxes to get growth. Now the Labour critique inverts the claim. Essentially, they're saying we failed at growth and have to put up taxes. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves set it out in her response.
The British people want to take full force. They know that what has been announced today owes more to the cynicism of a party desperate to cling onto power than the real priorities of this high-tax, low-growth Conservative government. So I think that we can forgive taxpayers for not celebrating when they see the truth behind today's announcements. Going into this statement, the government has already put in place tax increases worth the equivalent of a 10p increase in national insurance. So today's 2p cut will not remotely compensate for the tax increases already put in place by this Conservative government. The fact is that taxes will be higher at the next election than they were at the last. This is the legacy of the Conservatives, and that, Mr. Speaker, is their record.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Her key line, a high-tax, low-growth Conservative government. Now let's be fair to both sides. This is where we are. This autumn statement cuts taxes, as the Chancellor has claimed. But Labour are also right to say this government
isn't, as they say, just because the economy hasn't grown as fast, but that definitely hasn't helped over the last 20 years. It's actually the debt interest bill has gone up very significantly, and that hasn't been paid for with lower taxes. And sick as a country, and so gone up. Our third reason is because we have decided that the extremes of austerity back in 2019 weren't sustainable, so we slightly increased the level of public service spending relative to those back then. Those three reasons are why spending is up, and that's why taxes are actually up.
Yeah. Now spending is up. It's very confusing. Spending is up, but it's not so clear on the Conservative people that will actually get like the criminal justice system or NHS meals. None of those things the rich people improvement the arts used for spending.
Absolutely. I mean, if you step back and look at those, then I think one way to think about what's happened today is that we've had about £20 billion worth of tax cuts announced, but we've also had another 20 billion knocked off the real spending power of public services after the next election. So those numbers look completely implausible for whoever wins the next election. You name some of the worst elected departments, I would add local government to that list. is. I would also say, if you look at what's happened to public investment, what you need to actually build small hospitals, not just to staff them, and actually that's particularly important for delivering the net zero transition, the energy transition, that has been absolutely slashed, losing about a third of its value in the next few years as a share of the economy. That looks, again, totally impossible. So really the row should be about, can you afford tax cuts on this scale? Because doing so is going to require really, really tough decisions on public services after the election.
What has been fascinating to look at is it's not much talk about the curious effect of inflation on everything. The effect the revenue doesn't get, they get a lot more inflation through VAT, through income tax, more people paying higher rates of income tax. Inflation devalues the budget they give to government departments. It's a very sort of curious piece of the inflation and the effect of that.
Absolutely. I think that is absolutely key to understand what is going on right across the board, actually, with public policy right now. I mean, maybe fair enough, we found it hard to wrestle with that because we're out of practice, because we haven't had a big inflation shock before since 1970s. None of this would have come as much of a surprise. But yeah, as soon as you have inflation of this kind of scale, then the decisions you make that in the past felt like they were irrelevant about whether a particular benefit or particular spending rose with inflation suddenly become incredibly material to the public services in terms of how they're delivered, but also to the public finances. And the big picture today is the obvious most responsibility and sensitive job. So look, we've got higher inflation than we expected back in March. That's leading to much stronger tax revenues, not just where you've frozen tax thresholds actually, but right across the piece we're seeing higher tax revenues coming in. And the Chancellor said, well, thank you, that I'm going to spend that on tax cuts. So that is based on this fiscal fiction, is what I call it. The idea that we can see tax revenues rise in line with inflation, but we won't see public service spending also needing to rise either.
Just a very quick one, last one then. Would you expect, if you're a voter, whoever wins the next election, to have to make reductions in some way to make
Cool.
that
Go on.
Well, I think that is hard, because I think it does depend on what happens to the debt interest bill. If we see interest rates come down, then maybe we can get away with where we are. But if interest rates stay as high as
The public inquiry into the nursery St. crimes has formally begun. The chair will engage Justice Thirlwall, committing to investigate issues from the development. The public inquiry into Lucy Lucky's crimes was set up in September, shortly after the conviction for murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder another 6. The inquiry
Oh,
chaired Justice Thornwell said
What good? Handsome building. Yee.
at the earliest opportunity. But there's no realistic prospect of their inquiry being able to explore hearings before next autumn.
我唔記得俾翻嗰個 tick 嗰張表話你去玩嗰個 showcase。可唔可以下次俾啊哥哥？今日拉拿喺唔喺度？哥，今日拉拿喺唔喺度？拉老師，
The inquiry will be structured in 3 phases, looking into the experience of the baby's parents, the conduct of the hospital board and staff, and wider management cultures within the NHS. The former Deputy Commissioner Officer President Alison Van Tam, who also remained during the pandemic, said Putin's family received death threats in 2020. To complete the inquiry, the police were so concerned for their safety, they asked them to leave their home at night. Health Editor Hugh Wynne was at the hearing.
One leading player in response to the COVID crisis has already revealed his concerns about threats and fears for his family's safety. Sir Patrick Vallance, the former chief scientific advisor, said in his witness Now his former colleague Sir Jonathan Van Tam has spoken at the inquiry of his own worries during the pandemic, his horrendous workload, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, which he said he understood was his responsibility to bear. What had got to him, he said, were fears over his personal safety and that of his family.
I did not expect my family to be threatened with having their throats cut. I did not expect the police to have to say, will you move out to the middle of the night, or about the middle of the evening, will you move out for a few days while we look at this and potentially make some arrests. It was a very stressful time indeed.
Sir Jonathan added that they'd eventually decided not to move and said the vast majority of the public had sent supportive messages. But he said he was concerned that in a future crisis people would not come forward for jobs like his because of the stresses that came with them.
The campaign group Human Rights Watch said mosques are being closed in China to further where the Muslim population practices its faith. The organisation is fighting abuses across the world. Authorities in Beijing are also making the buildings look more Chinese to restrict Eastern influences. Asian Pacific editor is Michael Piston. China's repression of ethnic minorities in Xinjiang has been documented for some years. But in this report, Human Rights Watch accuses Beijing of targeting Muslims elsewhere, mostly the Hui minority in Ningxia and Gansu. It says China has closed down, demolished or converted many mosques. This is the sound of a prayer hall being torn down. Beijing, it says, is also refashioning mosques to make them look more Chinese, getting rid of minarets and domes, which China sees as imports from the Middle East. And the group says the ultimate aim is to discourage people from practicing Islam. In some cases, like here in Yunnan province earlier this year, there's been resistance to this process. China has not commented on the allegations. Its leaders have long sought to make people love the state more than their religion. The campaign is now intensified. The artificial intelligence firm OpenAI says its co-founder Sam Altman will return as CEO just 5 days after he was sacked. He was reinstated after all of the company's more than 700 staff signed a letter demanding his return. Signatories included some of those on the board who had originally dismissed him. Technology editor Zoe Kleiman.
OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, got through 3 CEOs in almost as many days, which began with the shock departure of co-founder Sam Altman. In a statement, the entire board of directors, which included one of his fellow co-founders, implied that he hadn't been honest with them and said they'd lost confidence in his leadership. We still don't know what they meant by that. Mr. Altman was very quickly offered a job at OpenAI's biggest investor, the tech giant Microsoft. But following an outpouring of support from OpenAI staff, Mr. Altman has announced that he'll return after all, and most of the original board has been removed instead. Some could see this as a triumph of people power and the resolution of a chaotic few days at a firm worth billions of pounds. But this messy, popcorn-grabbing sideshow has distracted from OpenAI's original mission, creating technology which could benefit the whole of humanity. The firm started out with the ambition not to make profit, but it does now have a profit-driven arm. Could we be about to see a shift in power between the two, with more focus on making money, much like the majority of its neighbours in Silicon Valley?
In the city, the 100 share index ended the day down 12 points at 7,470. On Wall Street a short time ago, the Dow Jones was up 173 points, 35,261. On the currency markets, the pound is trading at $1.24.9 against the euro. Sterling is at €1.14.8, and the euro worth 87.2 pence. It's been called the Great Christmas Tree War, and involves thousands of LED lights, a few huge cranes, and a lot of local pride. Spanish cities and towns of all sizes are in the grips of a festive feud as they battle for the title of Spain's and Europe's tallest Christmas tree. This year, competition has been particularly fierce, as Alberto reports from Madrid.
The mayor of the northeastern city of Badalona declared that at 40 metres in height, this tree would be the biggest in the universe. But it wasn't even the biggest in Spain, because Vigo in the northwest had a tree that was 4 metres higher, although it was helped, controversially, by a 19-metre star on its top. Then a third contender unexpectedly emerged in the small Cantabrian town of Perpes.
This mayor raised the stakes, slamming Yvonne Badalona for being cocky, warning that his town's tree would go as high as it takes. At 45 metres, it appeared to have sealed the argument, and yet that wasn't high enough. A latecomer arrived, a giant measuring 57 metres in a shopping centre near the southern city of Granada. In response, the mayor of Cardiff stuck to his word and ordered his town's tree to be raised by another 20 metres.
Returning now to our top story, the Chancellor has used his autumn statement to set out the government's tax and spending plans, leading to major cuts in national insurance payments for working people. Editorial editor Chris Mason to the UK at Jeremy Hunt's intervention might mean that the general election next year.
Amidst a hurricane of numbers and a blizzard of words today, just three things really matter: living standards, tax burden, and tax cuts. The government sought to sail today's statements on a breeze of rhetoric about tax cuts, and yes, they were flagged prominently and proudly in Jeremy words. He acknowledged too, when I interviewed him this afternoon, his political inheritance, the pandemic, and support paying our energy bills that shot up after Russia invaded Ukraine. But today's tax cuts merely reduce the scale at which the tax burden is growing. It hit a post-war high within 5 years, and perhaps more importantly than that, living standards have tumbled by more than at any point since records began in the 1950s. Graphs and rhetoric, spreadsheets and spin don't alter that core fact. It provides Labour with an easy target right now. But the most blinkered inheritances if they win the next general election. The government is grappling for growth, trying to estimate a listless, lethargic economy. The opposition would face the same grinding challenge to power themselves, if they get the chance.
Political editor Chris Mason, BBC News. Read by James Stone. In a moment, Gary Moore has a tale of public mishaps on another famous date in history. That's after a word about something new for next week. Please welcome 2023 BBC Reef lecturer, Professor Ben Ansell.
I don't think anybody expects to be asked to do these lectures, so it's an enormous honour, but it's an enormous responsibility.
Professor Ben Ansell explores the challenges facing democracy in the 21st century.
Democracy is our legacy from past generations, and it's an obligation of ours to secure for future generations. It's up to us.
Our democratic future, the 2023 Reef Lectures, begin next Wednesday morning at 9 on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. It's time for the Archers in half an hour. That's just after 7 here on BBC Radio 4.
This is Glenmore's Almanac, a show all about famous dates in history and what I was doing on those days, starring me, Glenmore! Oh yes, I'm Glenmore. Welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure to be recording this prestigious class. As soon as I arrived, I realised I've actually had to stop saying how the other half is, because with my accent it's something unclear which half I'm going to do. To explain the show and tell you a bit about myself, I'm fascinated by dating history. Take any moment, any day that's ever happened, something amazing will have taken place. Just take a look at the picture now. On that day, I did a work in progress on the show a few weeks ago, and I asked the audience what has taken place down the line. One of the very good questions says, local bombings? Yeah, I've written half an hour of material on that. Yeah. And I had. It was awful. It was awful. In the day, right? Loads of proper stuff happened. 1956, Elvis had his first #1 with the Grand Great Hotel. Living what? It's even today. You know, my granddad was actually an Elvis impersonator. The Simpsons not alive anymore. Massive day for the music industry, actually. 1942, Tammy Wynette, singer of Stand By Your Man, was born. 1988, Adele was born, immediately making a splash with her debut album, Naught. May the 5th itself is actually International Midwife Day. You may not think that's about music, but my favourite midwife fact is that when the rapper Ice Cube was born, the midwife was quite pretty. What else? 2005, there was a military insurgency against the government of Yemen. 1821, Napoleon died in are 2003, Harvard updated their bingo slang for the modern era. So two fat ladies came up with a 20 meter. And in 2005, it was the UK's general election. Tony Blair versus Michael Howard versus Charles Kennedy. Also the day that my school won the mock election, I ran. Now, I didn't mind secondary school. Certain things I disliked. It was a rough place and in a dodgy area. It doesn't matter how rough your area is. You can go outside with a loudspeaker in the morning, say, come out with your hands up, and see how many people just do. School itself was fine. It was actually quite good. You know, I think the first part of school was probably when you had to ask the teacher to go to the toilet, you know, especially this weekend you didn't have their number. Some things I disliked. I also hated things like sex ed, maybe because that guy had a nickname for a reason, but I'd say everyone at my school was pretty nice. You know, sure, the kids at school sometimes made fun of me. You know, they made fun of me for wearing double denim, but they were just jealous of things. So 5th of May 2005, what happened was we're having a school election campaign. We were doing our own version of youth parliament. If you were the school's prime minister, you had mixed responsibilities. You've got to do things like organise the school prom. You've got to choose the school's official anthem. You've got to decide whether to grant Scotland independence. Really big stuff for a school. And my God, if I became school prime minister, the power I would have, the secrets I would let out. I'd find out what the government knows about UFOs. I'd uncover whether the moon landing was real. I'd reveal whether there's a shop in MI6 that just sells novels about the Gatwick W.H. Smiths. Of course I stood, because I was ambitious as a kid. I'd always had big plans. I wanted to go travelling around the world. I've always wanted to go swimming with Dolph Lundgren. Now, to be clear, I shouldn't have been a confident 16-year-old. I had blind, unearned self-confidence. I still do, for instance, I firmly believe I can fillet a fish based purely on the fact that I'm quite good at slicing open a fish bread. But I was confident nonetheless. No proof to you, okay? I studied philosophy at school, and you know that other measure about the philosophy students? They were given the question to find courage. They just wrote the word this. That. My student was me. And philosophy is a very difficult exam to get good grades on. Everyone in my class, they got D's and E's at best, a C. Me, I just wrote the word this all down the room. I was the only student in the whole class who got an F. I screwed up so badly. I shouldn't have done it. Just wrote this. You put my name on the paper. It's a waste of time. I was going to go for this, even though I wasn't that political. I'm just not. I mean, am I passionate? Not really. Do I have strong views? Not particularly. Am I indecisive? Yes and no. So even though I was pretty apolitical, I thought I had the right tactics to win. It is politics. It's about tricking people into got the credentials. I cheat and deceive people all the time. I spray paint cheating bastard across the front of my house, make it look as if a David multiplier. Now, I'm not saying I can always influence people. A few nights ago, this is pretty embarrassing, but a few nights ago, I did that thing, like I ordered so much food for myself that when it arrived, I like called behind me, like, food here, everyone. I could just tell from the look on the guy's face, I had not convinced that waiter. So the moment Tony Blair was the real election, I went for it. Throwing my hat to the ring was a fairly simple process. I went to reception. The German teacher gave me the form to fill out. Frau Schmidt, she was in charge of the school elections. I fancied her so much. We seemed to actually really get on. We could talk about anything, you know, whether it was about where the discotheque was or how many siblings I had. This isn't the most delusional I've ever felt about an older person, by the way. This is true. When I was about 12 years old, me and my family got tickets to see anti-death Saturday Night Takeaway. We found out the music game was going to be Destiny in the party, and I couldn't believe it. It really fancied Beyonce. I was 12 years old. I fancied her so much that to this day, that is the most aftershave I've ever applied. I got onto a second bottle. This is the most flammable I've ever been. And I was sat so upright in my seat in the hope that she'd spot me. My thought process as a 12-year-old was, I'm seeing Beyonce tonight. Hope she's a paedophile. She'd like to commit a serious crime. Now, the first hurdle was I had to create my own party, come up with a name for it and everything. And now, in choosing a name for it, please bear in mind, this was 2005. It was a different time. I should have never have predicted that this name would end up being problematic in the present day, but hear me out. Okay, so we were called the COVID-19 party.